In the name of the one God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Please be seated. My theme this morning is casting our nets wide. Luke's gospel is not about catching fish. Some see it as the call of Simeon to follow Jesus, of the first disciple. Luke's very subtle in getting Simeon to follow him. No high pressure, unlike when we try to get people to work on the vestry. It's also about casting our nets wide. Now, how many of you have been watching the Olympics this week? Has anyone beside me? I love the Winter Games. You know, they cast the net wide. There are many countries that are participating, right? And so no one is excluded. It's about the many young people who have worked so hard for a spot on the Olympic team when we watch the Olympics to represent their countries. The opening ceremony is a time of great pride where participants proudly enter, representing their country and hoping to be the best in the world. They come in colorful and very expensive outfits, as you might have noticed. Some countries now did not participate or send official delegations of official people, like their presidents, because they are protesting China's stance on human rights. Problems persist in Southeast Asia, not only in China, but also in Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, who is on the brink of a civil war where the generals have overthrown the democratic elected president. Now, my first year at seminary was a time of moving outside of my comfort zone. We were being prepared to go into all the world to preach and teach the good news of Jesus Christ and his love and kindness to all people. Looking at the mission options for the January term, being at Venturson, I applied for the term in Myanmar, having never been to Southeast Asia before. I did a lot of praying in order to go. I had to figure out how to finance such an adventure and decided to put my total faith in God's steadfast and faithfulness and his kindness if this was to happen. As all the pieces of this phenomenal mission trip fell into place, I embarked on a life-changing adventure. The one thing not planned for was the tsunami that hit that part of the country or world days before the trip. I rushed to Walmart to stock up on some supplies to take with me that would help. It was an incredible experience. Luke's gospel is about catching the disciples. The fish are nice, but we are really being called to catch disciples, to cast our net out farther than the confines of this building, to catch more disciples. We must encounter the folks where they are, and many of them are not here in this building today. Jesus reached out to fishermen who had been very unsuccessful the night before. Simeon is at first reluctant to go deeper, as instructed, but this is the example we too are to follow as we seek to bring others into our fold and teach them about our Jesus. Church as we once knew it has been forever changed by the pandemic. However, we have grown good at how to come together in new ways. We learned years ago how to do outdoor services and to share our beautiful worship space with other churches. Technology is here to stay, and we must embrace it to survive, just as the Olympics were forced to change from how they were first started. Now, many of you, I'm not sure if you knew that the first Olympic Games took place back in the 8th century BC in Olympia, Greece. They were held every 4 years for the first 12 centuries. Then in the 4th century AD, all pagan festivals were banned by the emperor, and they were no more. Now, in ancient Greece, and I don't know how many of you remember this from your history classes, the athletes did not worry about sponsorship, protection, or fashion. They competed naked. Can you imagine? However, the athletic tradition after it was banned, was resurrected about 1,500 years later. The first modern Olympic Games were held in 1896 in Greece. Back then, the Games lasted 5 or 6 months. Women were not allowed to compete in the Olympics till 1900. From 1924 to 1992, the Winter and Summer Olympics took place in the same year. Now they are on separate cycles and alternate every 2 years. Now there have been many different people to win Olympic medals. How many of you remember Tarzan from your childhood? Do you remember those old Tarzan movies? I used to love them. Well, Tarzan competed in the Olympics. Were you aware of that? His name was Johnny Welselmiller. He was an athlete turned actor, and he played in the Tarzan movie in 12 of them, and he won 5 gold medals in swimming in the 1920s. Now, there have been many others to compete in the Olympics who became famous people. The church must look at how the Olympics have evolved. They embrace all people. They give everyone an opportunity to come in. Do most of you know about the 5 rings? Have you seen the 5 rings that symbolize the Olympics? Do you know what they stand for? Countries. They stand for the countries that were inhabited continents. Inhabited continents. And there are 5 rings because they called the 5 countries that had inhabitants the Americas, and they included both North and South America. They included Asia, Africa, Australia, and Europe. Now, there are actually 7 continents. So some say that they tried to put together Europe and Asia in order to include Antarctica, but originally it was America, it was Asia, Africa, Australia, and Europe. And those were the 5 original continents that they included. Now, in order for our church to survive, we must learn how to cast our net wider. Years ago, my husband tried to teach me how to cast a fishing line to catch fish. I was terrible at it. I had line wrapped all around me. Decided then I wasn't good at this thing called fishing, and he was just astonished. But if we are to continue to grow and flourish as Christ Episcopal Church, we need to look outside the walls of this church. We need to look beyond Old Branch Avenue. We need to look at the surrounding areas, and we need to be a welcoming presence for all so that this place may continue to grow and compete in the world today. We must invite everyone into our fold. Amen.